Welcome back to Respect the Process. I am Kelly Hunter, and via technology and the 21st century, my good friend Chris Stewart joins us from Newark, New Jersey. Voice of the Crimson Tide. You've never been so excited to be in New Jersey before, I bet.
I actually haven't. This is pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah, we're glad to be here, glad to still be playing, and excited about the fact that the next game is the Sweet 16 against a very good BYU team.
And all part of Coach Oates' plan, you stay on the road. Y'all did this last year when you were out west. This year, yesterday was the travel day for y'all, right?
Right, it was. And it makes you even more appreciative, I think, of the fact that they are staying on the road, because you think about it, if you were, especially with it being a Thursday game and the Wednesday responsibilities with the media, it's been really tough turnaround, frankly, because you come back, it would have been well after midnight on
Sunday night. Yeah.
When you got into Tuscaloosa, then you probably would have turned around and been on a plane again Tuesday morning, and coming back up to Newark, and that's a lot. So thankfully, just able to go stay on the road and use yesterday as a recovery day. There was a shooting opportunity for the players, but for the most part, they did that at Fairleigh Dickinson. And thankfully, though, mostly a rest day.
Yeah.
And as you and I visited, it's one of the reasons I was late or the reason that I was late getting back here is because they did have practice, and it was pretty intense. They got after it, putting in a lot of stuff as it relates to BYU and working on themselves and some things they need to do better, especially as it relates to what BYU does best. So they'll they got that work in, but they'll have the rest of the day to rest and get ready and go through some media stuff. I'll walk through again tomorrow, and then it'll be game day.
Yeah. Anyone limited in time or in anything else in practice today that you could see?
Not that I noticed. Yeah, okay. Not that I could notice. I mean, Grant Nelson seemed to be going, for what I could tell, full speed ahead, just like he had been before, and he looked certainly great in the final minutes of that game against Robert Morris, or we might not have had a round of 32 game for the Crimson Tide. He was a real spark off the bench, having not played the first 32 minutes of the contest. But then he was very strong in the ball game. In their next game against St. Mary's, needed him badly, and he was terrific there. So,
and talking about that, we go back to that Robert Morris game, which if you're like me and you had to do a quick research project on Robert Morris, you realize it was not the pastor in Texas who got in trouble. Timely, it just happened to be that his name was Robert Morris also, and that was the first thing that came up. But actually, it's the college in just outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Robert Morris actually helped fund the Revolutionary War, for those of you interested.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. It was well done on his part.
Yes, thank you. Good friend of George Washington, evidently. But, it was at the 8:47 mark of that second half. Alabama was up by 4 when Coach Oates decided that, and we had heard from the jump that, okay, Grant Nelson is available if necessary. And he puts him in at that point. And you look at him right now, Grant Nelson I'm talking about, and he looks like the young Nicolas Cage in Raising Arizona, I've decided. And
I see that.
But he comes in, I mean, his line was nothing extraordinary, 7 minutes, 5 points, 3 boards, a steal and a turnover. But it was the intangible of him coming in almost that was what Alabama needed to just kind of to finish the job.
Well, I agree with all of what you said. Although when you think about it, especially at the pace at which Robert Morris plays, the 7 minutes to get 5 points and to get 3 rebounds, you're factoring in on really positively when you talk about a steal as well.
Right, and only being up by 4 at that point too, to be able to come in and contribute that way.
So that's 8 possessions. That's 8 plays that he's prominently involved with, and no telling what he altered shot wise on other possessions. So yeah, it was a really good impact in a short amount of time. I thought it helped him, Kelly, get ready for the next game.
Yeah.
Because if he had any questions in his mind about whether or not he was good to go, they got answered with the time that he had on the floor in that game. So really good for the Tide. Excited to see them finish the way they did, and then take on a St. Mary's team that really goes with a different tempo from Alabama's. They needed him.
Oh,
he and Cliff were very much a factor in that win for Alabama.
When you look at those 2 games that they played last weekend in the first and second round of the tournament, against Robert Morris, you only had 2 starters that were in double figures. Mark Sears and Cliff Amore, it was huge. I'm sorry. And then Mo Diabatu coming off the bench with 18 points and 10 boards for him. But then you move on to against St. Mary's we were talking about. We had Amore, Nelson, Sears, Diabatu, Youngblood, and Holloway all in double figures in that game. But it was very much a different tempo game. And again, modern technology is amazing, because I was driving my son back he has basketball practice in Huntsville. We had my laptop pulled up in his lap, and we were listening to it on the radio also. I mean, I was like, technology is amazing.
It is.
But really, the tempo of that game, we were remarking, was just, you don't want to get lulled into complacency, but tempo and quickness is the backbone of Alabama's offense. And you really felt it against the Gales.
They did. 6 guys scoring in double figures. Nobody had more than 13, I don't believe. Yeah, that's right. Chris Youngblood had 13, all of them in the first half.
Yep.
Mark Sears finishes with 12, but he also had the 3 assists in the game as well.
His scoring came in late in both games, too, I felt like.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. When they had to have a bucket, he was a guy. I mean, very much like that Auburn win.
Yep.
Where he only had 9 points for the game, but his last 2 came just before the clock struck 0, and was a major factor in Alabama winning. It's because of their look. You got to have a star. You've got to have a guy.
Yeah.
But I think Alabama is so fortunate that while they have multiple players who can factor into winning, they all understand that when it's on the line, Mark is the guy.
Yeah.
And he's comfortable with that. At the same time, he is not at all afraid to get others involved until that moment, or even in that moment.
Well, he's smart enough to know. Yeah. Sometimes you go with the hot hand. And speaking of which, we've talked about Cliff Amore being a role player at times this year, even if his points don't necessarily reflect the impact he has on a game. But when you look at him against Robert Morris, 17 points. And then even against, against St. Mary's, 10 points. So in double figures both games. I felt like you almost couldn't get the ball in his hands enough.
Yeah. And wanting the ball, there was one play where there was a lob being thrown, and I thought it was for Jaron Stevenson. And Cliff just came out of nowhere and got the dunk. And I think I said on the radio broadcast, he stole it from his own teammate.
Yep, I remember that exactly.
But you want him going to get the basketball. You want him with that type of aggressiveness, because there's nobody really, when he's in that mode, that is an answer for him. He is really strong at the rim. When he's committed to going to the hole, it is very tough to get a stop.
It's hard to stop a train, as they often say.
It is indeed, and that is a locomotive.
You have an interesting perspective on this, because you were with them the entire ride last year through the postseason, and then obviously into the NCAA tournament. And I know that with turnover and just with the different teams, is there any comparison to last year's team and this year's team, or do you see similarities in the way that they are approaching this?
A lot of similarities. I think it's the fact that it's a close group. That was a close group last year, and I talked to Nate about this in an interview we did for his radio show in Hey Coach that actually aired last night. I said, there are there are teams where, it may be best to stay on the road, but if they don't like being around each other,
Right.
you as the staff don't like being around them, and he agreed completely. That's a key piece of it. They do like each other. They do enjoy each other's company. Uh, we're in New Jersey. We're not too far from Muhammad Diabate's hometown of Queens and his neighborhood. And in fact, just as I was coming up here to do the interview with you, Mo was talking to a couple of guys. He goes, "Hey, you want to go get a haircut?" And I could just picture, the barbershop. In fact, I was picturing Mighty's barbershop in Coming to America, because that's where they were, in Queens. It was like, I want to go to Mighty's. I want to go debate Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay,
That's right.
Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano. I want to go to that argument. That's what I want to go deal with right now.
That is
But
awesome,
it is cool
though.
to see there. It is cool to see that they want to have that time together. And when you have an extended stay like this, and you want to extend that stay all the more, you better have that type of camaraderie. And they certainly have it. And so that's a similarity. That is a similarity to last year. Now, something that's different is, yes, Mark Sears and Grant Nelson are the obvious leaders. They were last year. Mm-hmm. They are now. But Jaron Stevenson and Mo Diabate, who were role players last year, are leaders now as well. And Latrell Reitzel, who was a player last year, but also was injured and wasn't fully able to go, in and out in terms of availability in this thing, he's around, and he's like an extra coach. I mean, he truly is.
That's remarkable.
So, so they have some really core important pieces that understand what this is. They went through it last year, but you have other guys like Cliff Amore, but also certainly a Chris Youngblood, who's a very vocal leader and a veteran guy who hasn't been a part of this, but desperately wanted to be. That's why he came to the University of Alabama. And he has those leadership qualities built in. So he's among those that's helping the young guys go, look, we got to lock in. This is what it's going to take. At the same time, I saw today anyway, a really good mix of guys being loose and yet serious about the work they were trying to get done.
Yeah. Which is, and the reason it's timely, obviously, with the transfer portal opening yesterday, and coaches, we've heard about them. They're trying to do their jobs this week. They're trying to coach their team. They're also trying to retain their players. But to be able to create that kind of chemistry when you are trying to analyze bringing someone in out of the portal, recruiting someone, that is a part of the coaching process and part of the job that you when you look at the way the team has come together, you're like, that's something they do that you don't even think about, is how these personalities are going to meld together.
I agree. But I think you brought up something that I want to go into for a minute, and it's about the staff and their ability to manage things.
Yeah.
And to me, it's it makes what Nate Oats has done and what Nate Oats has built all the more impressive. We talk about his high school background, and to not come from the NBA, mm-hmm. to not come from high major basketball and having never been an assistant at a high major mm-hmm. level, and to have the veteran staff that he did, those three guys, Brian Hodgson, Antoine Petway, Charlie Henry, that were with him for those first 4 years, to lose all of them,
yep.
to have 3 new assistants last year and still go to a Final Four, to lose one of those guys and go back to the Sweet 16 and be in position to do it again speaks volumes. And I've been so impressed kind of watching how everything works, especially in light of the NIL. I don't know all the workings, but here's my understanding as an observer. You got Nate, who's the head coach, CEO,
Yep.
if you will, who's got oversight of everything. Everything falls back on him. At the same time, while all of those coaches coach and they're all involved at a certain level of recruiting, Preston Murphy's the primary recruiter. Well, recruiting now truly means understanding what the needs are in terms of personnel, but working with your NIL group on what the budget looks like.
Right.
And how do we utilize what we've got available to us? Nate's got the last call on everything, but there are people that there's a close, small number that work on sharing their input, almost like a small version of an NBA front office would do it. And Preston's heavily involved with that, which allows Coach Pannone, Ryan Pannone, to be locked in and break down and organize so much of what's needed on the offensive end. And then you've got Brian Adams, who is so committed and locked in on what they need to have done in the scout from a defensive perspective. And I say the scout, but all of these staff guys that you see, player development, video coordinator,
all of the guys sitting behind them and on the bench.
Absolutely. Yes. They all have responsibilities with scout and breaking down different teams on who your opponents could be and getting things in place. So it's a lot that goes into it. And it's amazing to see how that all works, how that all runs. Even the athletic department people, when you're talking about, people that are coming to join you, you've only got so many tickets, and key people that you need from your university standpoint, the political aspect of that within your own campus, how you have to work the dynamic. It's a lot. It's a major undertaking, and it's really kind of fascinating to have a meal and just observe and listen to all of the things that go on. So it's very, very, very interesting to watch.
Well, and to keep on that, but pivot just a little bit, 7 SEC teams have now made it into the round of 16, which is this season truly is unparalleled in what we've seen within the conference. 16 made it into the first round. 7 now are advancing to the Sweet 16, and using Arkansas as an example, who I did pick to beat St. John's, and I was so excited to see that.
Well done.
But when you look at that, my son and I were talking, saying, with the NIL money that schools have committed to them, the ability to go out and get 2-3 players, when you think about it on a basketball team versus 2 or 3 players on a football team, it's apples and oranges. And being able to bring in a few key guys that is going to elevate your team.
Yep.
That's why, and there's been so much talk this year about why we don't see the Cinderellas. Well, it's because the big programs have gone out, gotten the guys from the Cinderella teams, and now they're playing for the guys that are playing in the round of 16 this year.
How about the fact that Bama, very fortunately, just the way things played out, is the only SEC squad that won't have to face another SEC squad in the round of 16 potentially.
Yeah.
It is really, really, really crazy. There's Tennessee and Kentucky that are meeting in the Sweet 16. You've got Florida could meet Arkansas in the game that determines who goes.
It's not hard to say that you, in your Final Four, there could be an all-SEC Final Four.
Well, especially when you realize that Arkansas is kind of the wild card
yes.
in the deal. But you could, you could very easily have, and I may have said my bracket wrong, and I
That's okay.
apologize. If I did. Looking at no, I didn't. I did say it wrong because I didn't go all the way to the top. I didn't have all on one screen. But you could have Auburn and Ole Miss meeting.
Which Ole Miss is playing like a wild card right now too, with the
They
performance that they put on.
Man, they got a really good coach. They play tough. He's played in a natty.
And that's what's one of those
Texas
things. In telling people from around the country that I've talked to, I said, I've watched the SEC so much this season that I was willing to bet SEC each time when I looked at matchups, just because of the strength of this conference this year. That teams like Ole Miss and Arkansas, I never count them out.
Well, even Vanderbilt, which barely lost to St. Mary's, and I think had the lead for a good bit of that game. I'm not going to say that was a surprise. Neither was Mississippi State losing to Baylor by 3, but that's an 8-9 game. So that could go either way. Missouri getting popped.
I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I'm not shocked that Georgia lost. I'm shocked Georgia lost as badly.
I think Georgia was just happy to be to get an invitation.
Yeah, and they're playing a program that's used to be in there in Gonzaga, so I'm not shocked by that. Arkansas had to beat 2 really good programs. Yeah. Kansas is not a great team this year, but they're a really good program. St. John's is a really good team that's got some history, and obviously Rick Pitino does as well. Missouri getting upset didn't shock me because I haven't been overwhelmed by them all year. Oklahoma losing, especially UConn, didn't surprise me. So there's a couple in there that caught me off guard, but not a ton. I thought that A&M would beat Michigan.
Yeah.
But, that's not shocking. That's a 4-5 game that can go either way as well. So, there's not any bad losses. I don't really. If you want to break them down, I guess Missouri's the worst in the mix at 6-11. But, again, it's, to a Drake team that won a ton of ball games and has a good program and was only the 11th seed. So that happens every year.
Well, looking ahead, Thursday, y'all have the first game on the slate Thursday evening, taking on BYU Cougars. It's their first trip to the Sweet 16 since 2011. One thing we know about both teams, they do like to play with tempo. They like to knock down some threes here and there. We also know that Dawson Baker will, if caught in maybe a jump ball situation, not afraid to elbow in the junk if he needs to. He was taken out of that game for a flagrant 2, but will be eligible to play Thursday when the Tide takes the court. Maybe you want to do a quick cup check before they get out there. But
not signing up for that role.
No, but this will be a faster paced matchup from what we see.
Yeah, and look, Alabama's accustomed to playing with tempo. They are too, but I don't think their definition of tempo meets Alabama's. So they're tough, they're physical.
Yeah, watch the Auburn game tape.
They're skilled. Yeah, they're skilled. But this is one that I think may favor Alabama more so than the St. Mary's game did, simply because if it's best against best, our best is better, I think. So by no means overconfident going into that, but I do think the matchup will favor Alabama. It's not just based on seeding. I just think Alabama's got the better, more dangerous team. Here's another part that I like. We got to rebound.
Mm-hmm.
Got to rebound, obviously. But we haven't had a great shooting game yet.
No.
We've only made 13 threes combined in 2 wins.
Yeah.
And have still been able to score 80 or 91 or 90 and 80, whatever it was. You've still been able to put up good numbers. If this team does what they're capable of offense, they've gotten a ton of looks. They've even missed some at the rim.
Yep,
I don't mean 1 or 2. They've missed double-figure shots in 2 ball games right at the rim. And so they've got to – they clean that up a little bit, and you make 10, 12 3-pointers with that, they're going to be really tough to beat.
Cougars are led in scoring by their point guard Richie Saunders, which I don't. You may have seen this. He is an heir to the founder of the Tater Tot fortune, and so when BYU wins in March Madness, everybody gets free tots. I think we can all afford to go out and buy tots.
I'm not opposed to that. I'm a tot fan.
Yeah,
I'm a big tater tot fan.
It's not like the price of tots are like the price of eggs. So I think, hey, a BYU lost and you can still go out and buy your own tots. Still not bad. Now, second-seeded Alabama takes on sixth-seeded BYU this Thursday night in Newark. First game in the round of 16. Now, should, knock on wood, Alabama take care of business, they would play Saturday against the winner of number 1 seeded Duke and Arizona. I think a lot of folks would really like to see that Alabama-Duke matchup.
Yeah, I do too.
And that's
although
knocking
Arizona's,
on wood, yes.
Yeah, even though Arizona's got a great history and tradition themselves, and it's a really good team, obviously, as a 4 seed, that's one where most, I think, because of Cooper Flag, as much as anything. And look, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Just from a fan standpoint, I think we'll have more than Arizona, or as many, if that's who we were able to draw. Duke has a big New York presence, but I think there's going to be a lot of Bama fans from the Northeast that'll be there, in addition to the ones from our state that travel up there to be a part of it as well, if we can find a way to get to Saturday.
Would there, if that were to happen, would y'all come back are there plans made to come back to Tuscaloosa, or would you go straight on to San Antonio?
I would assume we come back. Okay. We did last year. Yeah. That's a Saturday, Monday deal, as you obviously know. And especially with us playing on Saturday, which is what happened a year ago. You got Sunday to travel back. You get back in town. You rest.
Do some laundry.
Probably a light day on Monday. Tuesday, you're in the gym. It's a good work day. And then you go on the
and if you travel on Wednesday,
probably travel. I said work on Tuesday. You may actually travel back on Tuesday, which I think we did. So you get work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with the media day, and then the game on Saturday, and hopefully for the first time ever playing in a national championship on that Monday night.
It's crazy to think we're right back here again.
It's
pretty nice. It's pretty nice. I mean, again, I did think of you because anytime you open your mouth up there, people are going to know that you are not from around there. You don't need the hat or the windbreaker to belie the fact.
It is no matter how hard I work on it.
I know. Do you have on a full tracksuit? Because when I think in New York.
No. I'm just the black joggers.
Okay.
And the Christopher Mobley obligatory tie jacket and hoodie, and it's
I didn't know as much time as you're spending up there. I just didn't know if all of a sudden you're like, I've always wanted to just wear like a tracksuit and go with it.
No. I wear the team issued gear.
Okay.
Quite a bit, but we've slightly ventured, not much.
Okay. Well, if you miss Chris as much as we do, because we haven't seen that handsome mug in person for about 2 weeks now, sure. You can always find him at chrisstewart.online, as well as listen this coming Thursday night when the Tide takes on BYU. We need to thank our good friend, our rodeo wrangler back there, Scott Forrester, for always keeping the rodeo clowns in check and for being patient. Thank you, Scott, as always. Appreciate it. Opening day's coming. Opening day's coming where hope springs eternal for even the White Sox and Rockies fans. I know. It's our day. It's our year. Okay, if you're looking for everything Alabama related, you can always find it at Cover Crimson, as well as every single day on Next Round with Jim and Ryan and Lance. I know you and Jim have been kind of traveling and doing stuff together while you both have been in Cleveland, as well as New York. Big plans for tonight?
Yeah, there are plans as soon as we finish this recording. I believe we're going to go and have a team meeting somewhere.
Okay. Well, I don't want to hold you up, but for Scott Forrester and for Chris in Newark, I'm Kelly Hunter. We thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week when hopefully we can talk about a Final Four appearance. But Chris, for now, we need a good Sweet 16.
Roll Tide.
Okay, we'll see y'all next week. Take care, everybody.